community that justifiably lingers in society's shadowy underbelly. In fact, it is comprised of people whose activities are rightfully criminal code violations in Canada, and for that fact, the world over. But shockingly, disturbingly, ever so slowly, the line is beginning to move regarding this frightening final frontier. I speak of pedophilia. For the vast majority of the world's inhabitants, the very idea of a child being sexually violated by an adult is monstrous. Really, is there a bigger taboo this side of cannibalism or incest? And yet here we are today. Can you imagine? Someone who can't buy cigarettes, liquor, lottery tickets, and is not allowed to vote is apparently mature enough to engage in sex with someone who is decades older? Does that make sense to you? I speak of an absolutely shocking report that was recently issued by international legal experts who have the backing of the United Nations. What? The UN supporting a crackpot idea? You know, like putting some of the worst dictatorships in the world on its human rights committees? You don't say. Well, the crux of the matter is this. The UN report appears to normalize those adults who crave sexual relations with minors. According to a Fox News report, here's what the Geneva-based International Commission of Jurists wrote with help from UNAIDS and the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Quote, sexual conduct involving persons below the domestically prescribed minimum age of consent to sex may be consensual, in fact, if not in law, end quote. The document is titled, quote, the 8 March Principles for a Human Rights-Based Approach to Criminal Law Prescribing Conduct Associated with Sex, Reproduction, Drug Use, HIV, Homelessness, and Poverty, end quote. That is quite the heap and helping of word salad, but when you delve into the document, it's downright chilling, given that it states children have both the capacity and the legal right to make sexual decisions. Indeed, in reference to this report, my colleague Ian Miles-Chung tweeted a while back that, quote, according to the United Nations, children may consent to sex with adults. This has been the plan all along, end quote. Oddly, the report does not offer a suggested age of sexual consent. Gee, maybe we have to defer to that despicable organization known as NAMBLA, you know, the North American Man-Boy Love Association, which was funded back in 1978. NAMBLA had a grotesque saying, quote, if he's 8, it's too late, end quote. In a 2016 article in Vice magazine, it was noted that NAMBLA is thankfully diminished these days, but it has not altogether disappeared. And for the so-called pedophile community, a cluster that makes the incel folk look like rock stars, well, it seeks greater acceptance these days. Indeed, they are rebranding the P word. Pedophilia, much like the swastika, doesn't really have the best brand image after all. So it is that Vice noted, quote, some pedophiles now call themselves minor attracted persons, MAPs. MAPs have their own language in the pedosphere, which is divided into the boy love, sometimes abbreviated BL, and girl love communities, end quote. Yeah, minor attracted persons. Apparently, intergenerational love is a new whiz-bang term for pedophilia as well. The phrase lipstick on a pig comes to mind. Is your skin crawling yet? But the Vice article notes the UN interest in pedophilia actually dates back several decades ago. Quote, at the time, NAMBLA hung around in the outer orbit of LGBT rights groups. But NAMBLA's sudden notoriety drew attention and disgust that such groups definitely didn't want. The International Lesbian and Gay Association faced a firestorm of criticism in 1993 when it took on its prestigious role of speaking at the UN on behalf of LGBT groups all over the world. Right-wing groups slammed it for its connection to NAMBLA, and the ILGA cut its ties with the group, end quote. Oh, those sinister right-wing groups, eh? Shameful, aren't they? Taking a stance against adults who desire to have sex with children. But getting back to the recently issued UN report, do you know it was inexplicably released in recognition of International Women's Day? Now, look, I know the feminist movement has thrown biological women under the bus, given that these loons are simpatico with the phrase trans women are real women. But if modern day feminists are okay with intergenerational love, then is it any wonder why so many women, at least the ones I know, take offense at being described as a feminist? It's the new F word, at least for them, given what modern day feminism has devolved into. As for the United Nations, it yet again continues to make the case that this cabal of elitists is in no way representative of the people in all of the nations that it claims to speak for. The very idea that there is somehow a connection between women's rights and the age of sexual consent, well, that's equal parts bizarre and deeply offensive. Little wonder hockey legend Theo Fleury recently tweeted, quote, "The UN is full of pedophiles," end quote. Oh, some free political advice to conservative leader Pierre Poilievre here. How about this winning plank for you? In addition to defunding the CBC, please promise to yank our Dominion out of the cesspool that is the United Nations. I can't imagine that any normal Canadian, regardless of their political persuasion, that they are down with the idea that tax dollars are being used to fund a corrupt organization that is now making the unthinkable argument regarding normalization and even legalization of pedophilia. Indeed, the International Commission of Jurists also noted in its report the following, quote, "The enforcement of criminal law should reflect the rights and capacity of persons under 18 years of age to make decisions about engaging in consensual sexual conduct and their right to be heard in matters concerning them. Pursuant to their evolving capacities and progressive autonomy, persons under 18 years of age should participate in decisions affecting them, with due regard to their age, maturity, and best interests, and with specific attention to non-discrimination guarantees," end quote. Here's the nitty-gritty translation, folks. If an adult and a minor are having a fully consensual sexual relationship, then who are we to deny this union? In fact, to deny such a consensual sexual relationship would be a form of discrimination.
That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest, either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.